Welcome back to another episode of Born and Bred. I'm your host, daCosta, and I'm here with Cam and Alishia from the Reach Foundation. The Reach Foundation is a youth mental health organization that does workshops and camps all around the country, and it is based right here in Australia. We're filming in the wonderful Collingwood, in this beautiful building. I actually really love this building. I've really fallen in love with it, like behind the scenes. It's really wicked. And this is where all the magic happens. Sit back and enjoy a fantastic episode. It's going to be a really great conversation. Welcome back to another episode of Born and Bred. I'm your host, daCosta, and once again we have a very special episode. Now every time I always say we've got a special episode, that's of course because we live in a very special city, one of the best in the world, the city of Naarm / Melbourne. And I'm here with two fantastic guests to talk about the Reach Foundation, which is a youth mental health focused foundation. And I'm here with Cam and Alishia, and who are part of that foundation, and just talking about both their own journeys with mental health, what they do with the foundation, a little bit more about what Reach is. So first of all, thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, my pleasure truly. And shout out to Shai behind the camera as well, who set this all up. And yeah, I'm really honored to be here. I've heard a lot of great things about you, but obviously it's better to hear it from you guys yourselves. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and just a little bit of your journeys?
Yeah, so obviously my name's Cam. I started with the Reach Foundation in 2015, yeah, so almost 8 years ago. And along that journey, I've done a whole heap. I've had the pleasure of working around Australia in a lot of schools. We're also doing a lot of community programs. I spent a bit of time away and I was a disability support carer. So I did that full time for about 3 or 4 years and in total for about 5 years. So I only came back to Reach at the start of last year, but yeah, I absolutely love this job.
Wicked. How about you, Alishia?
We actually started the same year together, so 2015, we're part of the new crew cohort. I grew up in like the southeastern suburbs. This whole world is really different to mine, but absolutely loved it, thought there was lots of value in it, stuck around the whole 8 years, unlike Cam. Love our work with the like Indigenous community and First Nations community in Alice Springs, which we've both done together, and just getting to like travel to community and like have impactful moments with young people. Where did your kind of heart for young people, community, mental health, where did that come from you guys? I know you referenced that you were doing disability support in between your time here. Where did that come from? Was that something that you were always raised with? Was it something you guys discovered at a certain point? What's the journey there?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because for me, like Reach, I feel like I was very lucky to get the opportunity. It was something that kind of fell onto my lap rather than I went out and searched for it. But in terms of like my passion for mental health, young people, and just caring for people in general, that's 100% in my raising. Like my mum is like an angel and she's done everything to provide for me, but also my family. And she taught me from young just the importance of karma and basically you do right and good things will happen to you. But also like the rest of my family are kind of social workers. So I've always had that sort of lens, of the world.
Really similar. Grew up like in a very like Catholic household and was always like, we need to be of service, we need to give back, we need to treat others the way we want to be treated. And like my parents hustled real hard, like lived that migrant life. And we grew up very middle class, but we always were in the community doing things. I didn't have like a workshop like Cam. I like looked for Reach and finding it was great. So yeah, it's always been in the blood a little bit.
No, amazing. And when it comes to you guys and Reach, how would you describe Reach to those who don't know it? And how would you describe what you guys do and have done within Reach?
I'm going to let you start.
It's a good question. It's a hard question. The way that I like to describe it, it's like a bit of a melting pot for anyone and everyone. It doesn't matter if you've grown up and gone to the richest school in Melbourne or if you've like grown up in the commission flats, like you are allowed to be in this space and there's no currency on stories or like your life. Like no matter where you come from, who you are, like we're all on the same level playing field. And because of that, I think we give young people the opportunity to dream really big or like have aspirations for life that maybe they might not have. And I always like to put it like, for someone waking up and getting out of bed every morning, like that's their goal and that's their biggest aspiration, and that's okay. And for others, it's like being a part of like this amazing sports team and like going to the NBA or whatever it is, but that's all allowed and welcome. Like there's no judgment on that.
Yeah, amazing. Would you add anything to that as well?
Yeah, no, very similarly. I think the main thing I look at Rich as is that it shows that all people have some similarities and are the same in some ways. So like you were saying, it doesn't really matter your goals or your upbringing or your life. We'll find some common ground.
When you describe that, you guys both kind of described in passing that you've done a lot of work in different communities at school, Indigenous communities at Alice Springs, all over the place. With Reach, what does that look like? I know you guys are known for your workshop. What is a Reach workshop? How does Reach actually reach the sorry, we had to fit.
Glad. You can say.
So I guess like mainly the workshops are 90 minutes, but we are known to do some longer ones in camps as well. But the main thing is to have like conversations, and those conversations can be about what's going on in your life, maybe the things you're dealing with, some challenges that you're having. But we try to keep it, or at least I think that we try to keep it as like, what's the word? Edible is not the word, but like anyone can kind of tell you. Palatable. I knew it had something to do with food.
Edible's a great word for us once,
So make it palatable for everybody. So we talk, and often like those conversations can get quite emotional, but that's due to the nature of, like I said before, people relating without realizing that they ever would relate. So you could have someone that's like super outgoing, that's really confident, but deep down they've got things that they're dealing with that they probably wouldn't let people know. And someone that's completely quiet, doesn't really show up, doesn't talk much about themselves, and then they realize that they actually have similarities in their stories, and that realization can be quite an emotional one.
What would you say are like some of the biggest common threads between some of I guess a lot of the young people you talk to, whether that's like among just like young people as a whole, or particularly, just young boys, young girls, non-binary folk. What are some of the biggest common threads you notice with all the myriad of kind of different mental health experiences and backgrounds that you've all kind of come across?
I think the biggest thing that we hear in our workshops is people feel quite alone and isolated in their experience, which I think comes with being a teenager. Like, you think you're in this like little world by yourself and no one understands you, and someone shares and you're like, oh, I don't know you'd feel the same way as me. That's probably the biggest thing we hear a lot. Like at the end of the workshop, we do this thing where like, what have you learned? What are you taking away? And people are like, I'm less alone, or like X, Y, and Z relates to me, or blah, blah, blah. It's really interesting. Yeah.
That's what you think. Would you say something similar? Or?
Very similar, yeah. I feel like that was even my experience. Like there was a long period where I felt real lonely, and I used to mask that up by being overconfident and trying to make as many friends as I could. But that theme of loneliness was one I didn't think other people related to. And when you go to schools, it's like one of the most common things you'll hear. So,
It's still crazy to me how much I think people, because I've done like youth leading in my past for the church I used to go to. They had a youth group, so I had the same group of boys from year 7 to year 12. They graduated last year.
Wow.
Shout out if you guys are watching. And it's just crazy how much people, even to this day, underrate how difficult high school is. Because you're just put in this one box, and you're told to be one way, and not always for bad reasons. You have to have order for things to go. And there are just so many divergent personalities, identities, ways of thinking, all that kind of thing. Everyone's supposed to be that one way while developing. And that's on top of any kind of family stuff you might be having, or kind of cultural things you might be experiencing. And I mean, what you guys do is so important. I didn't necessarily have workshop. I think maybe I had 1 or 2 workshops come through my high school experience, but I remember the moment when an older figure, whether it was an older high schooler or whether it was a leader from like my youth group, that older person looked and kind of saw me, and it just made such a huge difference because it's like, and I mean, you guys already used that phrase, young people, obviously you're dealing with teenagers, but like seeing them as young people and not just teenagers or kids is so important. And I'm wondering, like, do you guys have any kind of stories or anecdotes about moments in your youth coming up? You guys are obviously still young, but in your like youth, where there was that moment where kind of somebody gave you a hand up that really stuck with you, or maybe changed the path.
Like I touched on my mum already, but like she's the one person in my life that I never feel like I have to fake anything with. And for a big part of my youth and my teenage years especially, I felt like I was always acting like somebody that wasn't authentic to me. Which when you were talking before about like the older figures and how like everyone's in the kind of same box in school, like it really resonated with me because I feel like for so long I didn't know who I was, and I had like not like a crazy identity crisis, but I didn't know how I wanted to show up, how I wanted to act, who I wanted to be. But there was like 150, 200 other boys I was going to school with who all acted a certain way in my eyes. So it's like, I'm gonna act like that because that's the respect, that's what gets respect, that's the currency. But when I was at home, I was like a completely different person, and I always felt comfortable like around my mum more than anyone else. Yeah,
that's amazing. And you did mention off camera that you went to boarding school. So and I know from here, my dad went to boarding school himself, and I've heard stories of how that's an even more intensified experience of having to be a certain way because you're just all there together. But I think the question I want to ask off of that, kind of the original question, might be easy to answer is, for both of you, what is an experience you've had where you've seen that moment where that young person is being like, that's the first time someone's asked them that, that's the first time someone's seen it. That probably happens a lot, but what are some moments that stick out to you?
I got one.
Yeah, go.
Sure.
Please.
There was a camp we were on, and you were running the camp.
I was running.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're about.
And basically we were trying to show like a different side of ourselves that maybe we have inside but people don't get to see often. And there was a boy there who like had severe social anxiety, and he had like a bit of a stutter when he spoke because of that. And he found it so difficult to kind of speak to people and get his point across because he felt like very anxious when he was in a large group. And I got to have a moment where I sat with him and I kind of spoke to him about the things that I saw in him, and we were drawing on each other's face like different things that represented what we saw in each other. And I had like a dark horse. Imagine my drawing, you don't even know. It was a terrible horse, but I tried to draw a dark horse on him to be like, you're kind of someone that I feel has so much potential, but it's unseen. People don't know about it. And then we were talking about how he could show a different side of himself. And he said that he really likes to dance, but like he does it in his room and like nobody knows. And we'd spent, this was the second day of the weekend, so we spent quite a lot of time getting to know each other and stuff. And I said, maybe you should give it a shot and you'll be surprised at the response you'll get, because I think people will really appreciate it. And like he was nervous as anything, but he went up there and he like showed everyone his breakdancing. Wow. And it was, man, I wish you could have seen it. And then when he sat down, he just had this massive smile on his face. And he was like, he said, he's like, I've never been seen like that before. And those words, like, man, I bawled my eyes out. Like, it was the craziest thing. I was looking at this boy like, I see you as such a sweet, kind soul. And like seeing how anxious you are is like kills me because you're just amazing. But then seeing him have that moment where like he was like recognized and everyone was appreciating him, and he said he'd never had it before. It was like, I think about that like a lot.
Wow.
A lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What's like the opposite? What's like the word for like good trauma? Like when you have something so good that it sticks with you forever. If there is a word for that, it needs to be words. If there's a word for it, say in the comments. But Alishia, how about you?
Yeah, the one that's coming to my mind was like years ago. There was a young person who came on, it was another camp, but really struggled with like her self-worth and had like a history of like eating disorders and stuff like that. And there was a moment in camp where you had to go up and you wrote down a challenge that would kind of take you outside of your comfort zone. It all got put in a hat and hers was one of the first ones to get called out, and it was like, say 10 things you love about yourself. And she was standing up the front, literally shaking like a leaf, and couldn't even think about one thing. We have crew, like I'm not sure if you know about like our crew program and stuff like that, but they come and help us on our camps. And this crew member who also struggled with the same kind of thing got up, and they went 1-for-1 with each other on the things they loved about themselves. And it was like such a transformative moment, because this young person finally got to like speak these things that are really hard, but also just like speaks volumes of like walking alongside a young person. Like you can't expect them to do it if you're not going to get like in the ring with them and do it as well. And it was, it's one of those ones which you can't really forget. Like I think about it all the time.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Jeez, this sounds like the most amazing job. I would be crying all the time.
Oh yeah.
Wow. I really love that as well, because like, I think one thing that I'm a personal like big believer in is, this is a great place, but I think one of the things that I've become frustrated with, that we're a very self-deprecating society.
100%.
I remember saying with some of my schoolmates one time, and I think we were playing like Truth or Dare, some sort of like drinking game, Truth or Dare, whatever. And like I said, like, what's something you like say? I think I said something like, what's something you could like say something you like about yourself, or two things you like about another person. And people got really awkward. Like I remember one of them was like, this is kind of cringe or whatever. And this was a few years ago, so I kind of already gone through my journey of like, that's something that I believe and I do. Yeah. But I remember being like sad and frustrated, being like, dang, we roast each other so easily, but we can't actually speak those things. And it's like, I definitely like, I adore the fact that that's one of the practices. One thing you touched on as well, you mentioned that you kind of have crews. So would you kind of be able to highlight and explain kind of what these workshops look like, and how they work and how it works, and actually potentially even how people can get involved as well?
Yeah, so our workshops, we have a whole kind of, there's just a variety of offerings. We've got our school workshops, so that's from grade 5 all the way to year 12. And all our work is in the prevention mental health space. So like we don't come in when things are really bad. We try to get it early, build those skills, so when things do get bad, they can go, oh, like that workshop where I learned this, and this. Which I really believe in prevention work, because it's so important. So we've got our school workshops, and we've got our camps, which we just spoke about, and then we've got community work, which kind of goes for 2 to 4 hours. Do you want to add something?
I thought you
Did you say camps?
Yeah, I said we got our camps. Oh, sorry.
I said camps.
Yeah.
Should have ignored it. Apologies. But in our camps and community workshops, that's where we usually bring our crew along. They're aged like 13 all the way to 25. They volunteer here at Reach. They get trained every Monday night, like every second Monday in the term. And we pretty much give them personal development for free in return for them coming and helping us out on any of our programs. And their like literal job is to just sit with the young people, hang out with them, make them really comfortable, build rapport, but also, like as I said before, like get into the ring with them. When you're up facilitating in the front, there's a lot of things going through your head. You can't always be walking alongside the young people like 100% of the time, but that is our crew's role. And often it looks like them participating or them getting vulnerable. We do these like aerobics routines on a camp. So they're often in like short shorts and like weird makeup and like doing all these dance moves, but their role is to role model what we want to see in young people. So they set the tone. Yeah,
that is super encouraging and exciting to me that camp's going around teaching this, because it's like, not only is it kind of hard to find these things naturally, if at all, but the kind of base can be so negative, especially in a high school environment, whether that's the wealthiest high school in the country or whether that's like a really, a lower income public school. It's just, that's just not what we're taught to do. And that prevention is so important. Like, I know in my own journey, like, I think just, one thing I've struggled with in the past has always been things just like, perfectionism, which any kind of anyone, especially creators, can relate to. But even just a kind of sense of like harshly punishing myself when things go wrong. And with therapy in the past, I've been trying to teach myself more to just like, okay, actually, like, let me just stop myself before I call myself an idiot or get frustrated. So if I feel that frustration, I'm not giving life, I'm not speaking that. I just felt the difference, and it's really incredible that you guys are just giving that prevention. I can only imagine, like, just for that one moment, that one workshop, that one camp, what they're leaving with. So that's incredible. That's really incredible.
Man, you just sparked a couple of things in my head there. The first one is, it's funny, I talk about my mom so much, but she knows I've been on this podcast. But her go-to thing that she always told me growing up is self-fulfilling prophecies. So the words that you speak, like, you make them true for yourself, kind of like manifestation, but negative. So it's cool that you've, like, through therapy and stuff, you've been able to kind of notice that as a bit of a problem and stop that, because man, my observation of you is nothing of an idiot or anything like that. You know what I mean? And the other thing related to self-deprecation, and like even not self, but like from other people, is like that tall poppy syndrome.
Yes.
And session in Australia.
It's massive. And I feel like so often people won't do what they want to do, what they feel like their purpose is in life, for fear of what other people are going to think. And that's like probably like the number one thing, maybe top 2, top 3 thing in my job that like I love to kind of break down that, because there's so much, like as I was saying, like the boy I was speaking about earlier, there's so much potential for the young people of this nation, you know what I mean? And when we are so quick to think of other people's negative opinion, we limit ourselves so greatly. But yeah, this, like I feel like this is such a thing to start where you must have had backlash or fear of what people might say to you, but you've gone ahead and like done it, and it's obviously really great. And it's nice to see you so comfortable in your space.
Oh, thank you. Well, to speak to that, like I definitely, there are definitely most of people kind of looking at it weirdly, but I think it's one of those things as well where, like, I think when I started it, it just brought me so much joy. And this is kind of reminding me of that boy in the breakdancing. Like, it brought me so much joy when I started it with my sister that kind of sustained, and that eventually that was kind of provided armor, which is why, like, with that boy in the breakdancing, it's like, or even with that girl, and like just being able to list things about yourself. When there are things that you like or you enjoy, and you engage in those things, you make a practice of doing them. It's eventually kind of gets to that point, hopefully sooner rather than later, but it varies for everyone, where it's like, I enjoy this so much that I don't want to not do it. And even when you kind of hear someone speak against that and it hurts, the hurt comes from a place of, like you just told me something that isn't true, rather than, you told me something that's actually breaking me down. I remember one time, like years ago, someone that was close to me at the time, like looked at kind of this and said, like, I find everything you cringe. And I found it really hurtful. And I kind of hate the word cringe as a result. I really kind of detest it. I don't like to use it nowadays. Because just in high school, it's just so destructive. People usually really destructive. That's a whole other tangent. But the reason why it hurt at the time was, one, because someone close to me would say that, but also because in my heart it was like, that's not true. Like I just don't think that's true. Which was a blessing, but sometimes you hear that the wrong time in your life, and it throws you completely off. So what you guys are doing is really amazing. We've had a fantastic conversation so far about Reach and what you guys have done for Reach. And kind of in this next section, I just want to explore you guys as individuals, what you're into, what you like, and your kind of journey with mental health, like on a personal level. And also like just some of your approaches and philosophies around mental health, the culture, even just Melbourne culture, music, that kind of stuff. So for starters, before I go everywhere, which I tend to do, what you guys are doing outside of work. I feel like fashion might be part of it, you guys, based on the fits. I hope you guys are seeing this, by the way.
Show this one. But I don't want to assume,
although it's easy to assume. What are you guys are doing outside of work, and what are some of your passions and interests outside of youth and mental health?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, as much as I love to help youth, I'm a fighter outside of Reach, so I like to hurt young people. Hurt young people and give them a workshop and find the balance somewhere. Fighting is like my biggest passion, what I spend all my time doing when I'm not working.
Like what kind of fighting? Sounds like
MMA. Oh yeah, sorry.
Sounds like you're throwing hands for no
I'm
reason.
not a street. Never fought in the street. Now I'm a good man. I'll fight in the cage. Mixed martial arts.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you say that because like, from your build, that makes sense. But you're such a.
That's like the 5th, 10th compliment I've got.
But I mean, it's from your vibe. You're such like a cuddly, friendly guy. So it's like I can't imagine. I say I can't imagine you in the ring, but I say that not as a diss. But I imagine when you're in the ring, it's probably a different. It's probably like a different like vibe as well.
Yeah, not too different.
Not aggressive, not like aggressive and angry, but obviously like
That's probably my downfall. If I'm honest, I lost my last 2 fights. So I reckon I've been a bit too relaxed in the ring. I need a bit more of that aggression, maybe. But it's funny you say that because when I go to schools, like that's one of the first things I tell all the young people, kind of build a bit of rapport. And like 90% of the room always is completely shocked. Like they would never expect it. I think the glasses are slightly deceptive, you know. But I can see without these. Just about.
Fashion is definitely one of mine. I love clothes. I love how you can express yourself through them. I love makeup, and just like seeing how people can transform, like their mood or their vibe and all that kind of stuff. But also just growing up, like music was a huge part of my life. Trained like for 10 years as a singer. Not anymore though.
Well, I mean, the skills don't go away.
No, they don't. But yes, like have a lot of friends in the industry and like doing really cool things, whether it's making clothes or dance or art. But I don't know. I tried my hand at it and it's a big industry. So I was like, no, it's not for me.
It's definitely big.
So yeah.
But the beauty of that is that actually Ish loves to sing, you know, whenever she gets the opportunity. So hopefully
Shut up! I was like, where's the
The thing is, I would jokingly ask for a demonstration, but then I'd have to ask you for an MMA. And I would probably have to do the guinea pig. I'm not trying to get like choked out cameras.
That is so funny.
So yeah, but let me say that is. Can I just say you guys are very cool people, by the way, as well. Like I can imagine when teenagers come and they see guys like you come in, it's like, oh wow, it's already like. I think one thing that I'm really big on is obviously you guys being who you are is just natural, right? And it happens to be cool. But I'm a big believer of if you do happen to be in a position where, by your fault or not, you have some really cool talents, you're fashionable, maybe you're considered attractive or good looking, whatever. I wasn't shooting my shot at you guys, but I think it's very important that if you recognize that, which is why I think it's also important to not be modest and understand that you have that, use that to then be like, oh, I see you as well. Because I think, and I think we talked about this off camera a little bit, or on camera, I don't remember at this point. It's just all been great conversation. But I remember those moments for me when I was young and someone who I thought was cool and out of my league or whatever, and they were like, hey, I think you're cool too, and they actually kind of looked me in the face and said, you're cool. Those are some of the moments I remember the most and empowered me the most. So the fact you guys are as cool as you are doing this is just really cool. And I know I owe a lot of my journey in this to people like that who do that. They're behind the camera, you're one of those people as well, Tati as well.
I think, like on that note, it's really interesting because, like, as two people of color who get to go and do this work, there's like a level of complexity to that. And I think one of like the privileges in my job is when you go up to a school and you get to be that for someone. Like, yes, we are cool. Yes, we're all these things. But then someone comes up to you at the end and is like, you're the first person who's like asked me this, or you're the first person I've seen from my community who's like really in touch with their emotions or vulnerable and stuff. And it's cool because we get to be a bit of a role model for that. Like, I don't like growing up, there's no one who looks like me doing this kind of work or having these combos. It was just a bit out of reach. So I think that's like one of the things. Oh yeah.
Number three.
It's just you speaking about that got me thinking like, yes, we are very cool visually, but there's like so much more to that we get to do with that power because it is a power thing.
But also it's a journey too. Like I'm thinking like you know what I mean? I will take all these compliments and I will embrace my power. But at the same time, it's a journey. Like I was not this person at 15, 16, ever. Like, and I don't know if I saw myself as this man today. So yeah, that's like what's really important is like when I do see the younger people, that we acknowledge that like you don't have it figured out because I still don't have it figured out.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, like one thing we touched on previously was the whole kind of thing of how there's a real big high school culture and this young culture of like calling things cringe or anything that's different is cringe. And I think that it's really powerful and important when you have those people who can see you and understand your different identities as well and say that's not that and just kind of be in those spaces because again, like you said, it's like that's you guys just being who you are, but just you being in those spaces alone is I've never seen that, you know? And especially with varying kind of cultural backgrounds and just like you know having a you know in I'm not sure what the parent situation will be for you guys, but whether it's a migrant situation or a refugee situation, there's like that element of just having to work, having to hustle, not having time for that. Both on a mental health level, but even on like an arts creative level, on an outlet level, on an MMA level. Like it's like I didn't have time to fight for fun. I was fighting for my life in real life, or I didn't have time to do music. I was too busy having to look after my other siblings. So it's so important seeing kind of people like us, and that includes other sexual orientations as well. Just existing in those spaces, it's huge. It's really important. Like I think we hear representation a lot, and we kind of almost treat it like a buzzword, but it's so deeply important. And it's again when you go to that school and you get to kind of see that one person. Like, I didn't realize that's. Like I've had moments like that in terms of me being that person, but also times where I've been that for someone, and it's just the best feeling because it just opens up your horizons. Another question I wanted to ask is kind of what have your own journeys been with, I guess, your mental health kind of growing, coming up, and how did just your life, your interests, your culture impacts that? What's your journey with that? You know.
My background's Indian and my parents like migrated here, and growing up it was very like a head down, like bum up kind of like mentality of like we've sacrificed a lot for you to be here, like we want you to have the best life that you can, like you need to do what you can. So there's a lot of like I didn't have a lot of expectations, but I felt a lot of that expectation because I still want to let them down. Like they have done so much for me to live this life, and like their lives were really, really different to this. So there was this like part of me that's like, yes, I want to make them proud, I can do this. But with that comes this thing of like, I never wanted to tell them when stuff wasn't feeling good. Never wanted to make them feel worried or start to like have to put too much energy into me. So a lot of my coping mechanisms growing up was just like bottling things up.
Did you have siblings? Were you an older sibling?
Yeah, but a younger sister. I'm the elder sister.
Okay, yeah.
Could you get that vibe?
When you said like you didn't want to seem like that feels like older sibling.
Yeah. Because then like on that, like my sister's 6 years younger than me, and it was a lot of like I didn't want her to think that I didn't have my shit together because I wanted her to feel like she could come to me. And she's like my favorite person in the world, but she had a lot of like, she's a bit anxious here and there, and like just a bit like, I love her, but like I needed to be there at times. You want to be a rock for that person. Yeah, and same with my mum, like absolutely beautiful woman, but like recently like life has felt a little bit tricky, so like I've needed to be that rock for them. So you never want to be the person who then needs to like fall on them or call on them for help. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey.
And just speaking to that a little bit, sorry, so point of you can, it's like, I think, obviously that's something that you kind of came up feeling, but even for me, I didn't necessarily come up feeling that pressure in the same way, but now that I'm older, it's like I'm feeling a bit more pressure for that, and it's like, I think the thought that came to my mind is that like, we kind of feel a need to be a rock, but we're actually soil. Like we need to be fertilized, we need water, we need sun. We're not the rocks we're trying to be, and it's like, and we're the most effective when we're actually soft and malleable, and things can grow from that. But we're all, for various reasons, we feel like we need to be a rock. But it's like, yes, you can hang on to a rock, but nothing grows from that, And
mental notes. That is good.
Real good.
Oh, cheers, thank you. I love my analogies. Shout out to just children's books.
The Zeus on that one.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Cam, how about you? What's your opinion there?
I guess there's some similarities there, but for me, my parents separated when I was quite young, and like that was something that I guess struggled with quite a bit because, as I said to you, I was in a boarding school in my primary days, so like I wasn't around any of my family at that point, and like the nature of being in a boarding school, it was quite affluent. People there all had like mum and dad kind of at home. So from a young age, it was like I was quite conflicted because I felt like in that environment, no one really got me. And then when I was about 11, the start of my high school journey is when I moved over here with my mum. But I had some cousins and my auntie and uncle living here, so we moved in with them. And when I started high school, it was like more of that kind of alienation. And I touched on it earlier, like I've never been one to kind of really get shy or really be too, I guess, introverted. I'm a very extroverted person. Yeah, but it was like it was almost like a facade at a lot of times because people didn't talk like me, they didn't look like me, they didn't have, or I felt like they didn't have similar life experiences to me. So for that reason, it was like I wasn't myself when I was at school. Like I was a loud, kind of real outgoing person, but that other side of myself that was quite lonely, quite isolated, really confused and didn't understand my belonging in society. Like I never like shone light on that person. And given the nature of my mom being the angel that she is and all the sacrifices that she put in, she was someone that would be comfortable talking with me, but very similarly, I didn't want to be any more stressed on her life. Yeah. Like, so I kind of had to brave it out a lot of times and pretend like I was a lot better than I was. But yeah, like reach and the work that I've been able to do from the time I was about 16 really opened up that side of myself, that a lot more caring, compassionate, and I guess honest side, which is why like I really try to do that stuff now. And that discomfort, yeah. So that I felt then has allowed for me to like feel a lot more comfortable in those scenarios, and it translates to everything. Like that's fighting for me. That's like being in the cage, having all the eyes on me. That is the same feeling as that 14-year-old version of myself. Trying to be honest with my mates. Like that feeling is universal. And through practice now, there's not much I feel like I can't do. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that's amazing. I think when I hear your journey, I think there are several points of relatability that I feel. Well, for one, with the boarding schools, because I didn't go to boarding school, my father did. And you kind of briefly mentioned how like, kind of they were kind of two parents. My dad was also raised in a single parent household. And I'm sure there were kind of elements of feeling like you had to perform normality, which is really tough. And then in terms of you kind of being a big extrovert in school, like for me, like again, yeah, I'm naturally quite extroverted. But I remember when I got to Australia, I got two younger sisters. We kind of all coped with moving to well, at that point our third country, our second big kind of international move. And my way of coping was like, let me just kind of be friends with people. How do you do that? And it was helpful in a lot of ways because I got, help my people skills and kind of blend into any crowd. But it's again that kind of, it makes your kind of sense of identity like a lot more, it makes it a lot more difficult. And especially as a person of color, and I was in a mostly white school as well.
They exist everywhere.
It kind of made it more difficult. And I mean, oh gosh, I know you guys are both related to this. But that's definitely back at this from. I definitely should not allow that friend to make that joke.
Oh yeah.
I don't condone violence, but if I could go back and tell myself, my younger self, to maybe just like slap that person a little bit, I would. I'm joking. I say that. I'm joking. I'm not condoning violence.
I think that though fits into that thing of like we never want to say what's actually on our mind because out of fear of like we won't be liked. Like I had moments like that where people said like completely not okay things, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I'd rather have you as a friend. that like piss you off.
Yes.
You know, so
Yes.
it's like a coping mechanism.
100%. And if you even circle it back to that self-depreciation, it's like, how much did you value yourself at that point in your life?
Totally.
Like, you know, like I feel like now as someone that's more understanding of themselves and more sure of themselves, there are things that you won't allow.
Yeah.
But back then when you're trying to fit in, you're not sure who you are.
100%.
Anything goes, you know.
100%.
Or a lot of things. Hopefully not anything, but yeah.
Absolutely. And there are so many intersections in that experience as well. I mean, like, and there are so many different ways in which we're forced to cope. Like, I mean, obviously, in both of our cases, we're two men of African descent, so there are certain things we could have got. Like, I mean, again, I was never really confrontation, I don't really get in fights, but there was an expectation of aggression in some things, which in my case I wanted to subvert, which maybe and in doing so didn't defend myself enough.
Yeah.
But then there's also the element of like, if I had, then it's not that it would have been rewarded, I probably would have got in trouble, got suspended, but that also would have been people expected.
Yeah.
And so I would have gained respect in being more of that.
Yeah.
But then in your case, being a woman, it's like there's a whole aspect of like, you're not allowed to, you don't want to be seen as, she's being a bit of a, like, you're just expressing an issue, but then you're through being called, like bitchy
like angry.
or problematic or angry, and then that's then tripled when you're a person of color. And so, yeah, it's like there are so many like intersections and aspects that, and it's why this kind of work is so important, because there are so many, intersections of identity that, we experience that we don't even have the language for at that point. The term microaggression, some might roll their eyes at it, but it's so real. Like, why did that feel wrong? And just all the other coping mechanisms and trauma responses. And so, I guess to kind of add on to that question, like on a personal level, when did you kind of start taking actual notes of your mental health? Well, not just your mental health, but your identity. Like, when do you start actually making choices? Oh, this feels wrong, I want to change that. Oh, I really enjoy doing this, I'm actually going to go this route. Was that during high school? Was that after? What was that like for you guys?
Yeah, mine was post high school, was actually in COVID. I feel I thrived in COVID. Like, I love kind of being locked away, like getting to my own peace.
Everybody hates you, doesn't you?
I don't know, there's something just about being in my own space constantly, like being out in nature, reading books, like all that stuff. I really started to look inwards, because there was like, we only had time to do that. And like one of the biggest things that came out of that, like I was in like a 3-year relationship, which I ended at the end of COVID. And that was that kind of catalyst of, I feel like a bit of a chameleon in my life. I think it's a coping mechanism where I've like, whatever space I can go into, I just become part of that place, because it's just easier to blend in than stand out.
Side note, are you more introverted or extroverted?
Introverted, yeah. And then coming out of a relationship where I felt like I bent myself quite a lot to like just fit some sort of mold, I was like, who am I? Like, I had no idea. And started seeing a psych like during COVID, which was really interesting. And the biggest thing that would come up at the end of every session was like, she was like, you just don't know your identity. She was like, you have no idea who you are because you spent your whole life being someone else for other people.
Wow.
And that was one of those like kind of defining moments of like, yeah, that's so right. And I feel like the last kind of 3 years has been me just trying my hand at like, who am I? Like, what are the things that I love? Who are the people I love? It's been really interesting, but so important. And like that, I only started doing that at like 22. Like, I think what I love now is like I get to start those conversations like way earlier than that. Because I wish I was this version of myself in high school, because I would have had really probably the same friends, but just like acted really differently or just held myself differently.
Yeah. That's wow. It's really it's so crazy like how much of us and what we need goes under the radar. I mean, because it's like, you've obviously been doing like this excellent work for the past 8 years, but it's only the last 3 where you feel like you find yourself. And it's just so crazy how you can be in a space thriving, or at least on the surface, or not even in the surface, like in your life, like you might be doing a great job, making great money, you might be secure, and there's still, I think what you described kind of, it really highlights just the importance of looking at yourself, because I think that in a Western society, or just in society in general, I mean, like I said, all those things I listed are things like, if you've got those things, you're good.
Yeah.
If you're stable, you're good. if you're doing a job you enjoy, you're good. And you just might say that to yourself, and then, but then you kind of think, why do I feel so off? And it's that's really incredible. And actually, I started seeing a therapist at the start of the second year, so at the start of 2021. Well, I saw her, lockdown happened, and I started going regularly in 2022 and then on to now. So it was a similar kind of timeline for me in terms of actually like looking inward. It's just crazy, like how much you realize, like just you've been going on autopilot so many ways. And it's like, oh, actually, that's not healthy at all.
Yeah.
This is actually, like, I didn't realize, I wouldn't say I have like clinical anxiety, but I didn't realize how much I was functioning anxiety and how much of my decision making and my thoughts about life were anxiously based. And that can come from various things, generational things, racial experience, this kind of stuff, blah, blah. But it's really fascinating like, how much it was. I imagine, was that like a really big, like, what was that? Was there like a pin drop moment, or was it something you kind of realized gradually for you?
It was a bit of a pin drop moment. Like, it's funny because you're right. I have been doing this work for so long. Like, one of the questions we base all our work off is like, who are you? And my psych asked me that, and I just had no idea. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I cannot form words right now. And she's like, well, what are the things you love? And I was like, like I can tell you like a few things, but like there's nothing that I'm like super sold on at that point in time. There wasn't anything I was super sold on, so it was like a huge moment for me. And something like I've been doing recently, I don't know if like anyone's into kinesiology, like body work, like energy, and we got some gusts.
We just had Shy just like expressively moving in
like tapping into like a different side of, I guess, mental health. Like it's it's more like Eastern kind of stuff rather than Western medicine.
Can you paint an example of like what a practice of that looks like?
So like I go into my session and the first like 15 minutes is just like chatting about where I'm at, what I kind of want to bring up. And then you kind of like lie down on a bed and the kinesiology therapist like taps into your energy, so they're holding your hand and they ask your body questions, they ask the room questions, and like they start moving and they get like signs from the field. It's really interesting, and I kind of went into it because I was like, I just want to see like where my body's at, and I've gotten so much out of that practice as well. Just like things that I hold on to or things that I thought didn't exist anymore, but they might still be there. So that kind of paired East and West together, which I really enjoyed.
Either you said Eastern is referring to like Eastern Asia, or kind of more?
Like that. That kind of region, like Reiki and stuff like that is all from
Right, and it's like we have, because of the internet, the generation we're in, like, we've got access to kind of practices and thought and just schools of thought and philosophies outside of what we're just taught in school, which is obviously very referenced by just, this broadly the West, Christianity, it's broadly those strokes. And I think especially, and that's why I think it's so important to just be connected to like the roots as well. It's kind of a bit of a tangent, just like know where you come from, what maybe your ancestors believed before they were colonized. They were colonized, which is most of us.
Yeah, everyone.
Shout out to UK. We love you, shout out, we love that. And not just brush it off as like, oh, it's whatever, but actually be like, oh, it's, uncivilized. Actually look at that, oh, actually, like, what were they doing differently that works, that we're not doing well? So I just know, I really, thanks for bringing that up. That's really...
it's like decolonizing ourselves.
Yes, that's the word, decolonizing yourself. Oh, that's a whole podcast episode.
Watch this space.
Oh my gosh, for real, that's dangerous. But Cam, how about you, bro? What's your journey with like mental health and just finding your identity?
Man, I'm sorry, I got lost there for a little bit. I was really thinking about decolonizing my mind, and right now I'm going to declutter my mind and get to where we were. So, yes. So, I think it's like...
Can I just say real quick? This guy was saying he's not like good with words. You hear that wordplay? Anyway.
This guy, we do this thing here. If you could have one person like shrunk down that you could put in your pocket or put in your shoulder to like give you advice or something, you would be that person. And I want you there just feeding me affirmations all day. Just telling me you're killing it, you're sounding good, looking good. But I appreciate you, Noah. But for me, finding out who I was, it's funny because like I was thinking, it must be a recent thing, but it's been like a lifelong thing. Like I remember being in that school about 8 years old, and everyone had to have their hair like brushed, and I had this curly afro. And I would tell them my hair is not straight. I can't be doing that what they're doing with their hair to my hair. And like having those kind of conversations early, and like having my mum and my grandma specifically were really on me about my heritage, where I'm from, and understanding that.
What's the Ghanaian side or the Gambian side?
So that's the Ghanaian. I've got Ghanaian on both sides actually.
Oh,
But
that's it,
yeah, that's the Ghanaian side.
Yeah. Shout out Ghana.
You know what I mean? Yes. But yeah, so like kind of understanding who I was from early, but it was more, I guess, being in environments where I couldn't like, or I didn't, not that I couldn't, but I felt suppressed in who I was, and it wasn't appreciated. So I maybe hid that for a while. Didn't like embrace it as I should. And then when I was about 16, I went back to Gambia with my dad, and we had like a real, just like an amazing time. You know, I got to spend time with like cousins and aunties and great aunties, and I saw just the appreciation for the culture and the environment that was there. Like as soon as I was there, like the love was just unmatched. And like these are from family members that saw me last when I was like 5 years old. But the way they spoke about me and my mum and my dad, it was just like amazing. And that connection I felt there was like one that I hadn't felt in like my entire life. Like people just understood me. They were so compassionate of me. The land was beautiful. Like everything about it was just an amazing experience, and I felt so much pride. And my dad having a house out there, like made it quite a point that one day this is mine, like me and my siblings, but this is ours, and it's important that we feel connected to where we're from. Like I don't know Wolof, which is the language of Gambia, but like that's like a life goal. I plan to live there. I plan to learn the language. And then after that experience, I remember coming back, and at that point my dreads are starting to grow, and I'm gonna grow them long, and I'm gonna show who I am. And I was a lot more comfortable, like being real honest with people about I'm Ghanaian, I'm Gambian. Rather than, I'm Cameron, I was born in England. You know what I mean? Like really pushing on that kind of the Caucasian side of myself.
No, that's great. I was just gonna say, like, it's really amazing that you have got to have that experience in terms of experiencing your home culture and coming back proud of that. And it being so undeniable, even in high school, it's like, I'm gonna do me. It's something that I envy to, because I haven't been to Ghana or Guyana yet. And I remember that when I came to Australia, one thing that I found interesting, just in terms of that, is, in the UK, I'm a black person there. When I was in the US, I was a black person. But when I came here, I was African. And that's the first time I've been called that, because for me, I was born and raised in the UK. My mom was born and raised in the UK. That's what it was. So, funnily enough, coming to Australia has made me actually think more about my Africanness rather than just my kind of black diasporanness. And especially the last few years, I've kind of gone into more spaces and kind of in the kind of the sense of kind of finding your identity, just going to more events and finding more of the community and all that kind of stuff. It's like I found myself becoming, not that I was ever ashamed of it, but I was just there, and now I'm like actually more proud of it. I want to connect to it more, and you're saying how like you got a house there, like you want to live there for a great learn language. Same deal. Like I don't know the language, and it's like everybody here, like all the people of African descent here, they their parents are straight from there, or they're straight from there, so they speak the language. Like I mean, Navera's behind the cameras. These people, was it Arabic? What else?
Wow. Okay, don't put me on the spot. And if anybody ever sees this, do not randomly walk up and ask me to stop speaking this shit, because I swear to God, it's more than that. English, well, Arabic's my first language, then English, then I learned Italian in school for 10 years, then I picked up Spanish and French and Japanese and...
The Western language, you're flexing now. That's I'm getting more depth. The point is, like, someone like Navera, who wasn't necessarily born in Australia, like, she speaks Arabic, English, and a bunch of other things. And like that's something that a lot of people raised here do have. Well, even outside of Africa, just other those of Eastern Asian descent, those of South Asian descent. Not everybody, but a lot more than was the case in the UK, because all those parents have been there for a few generations. So it's I think one thing that has helped my identity recently, the last few years, has been exploring that more, and I guess kind of like owning that more. Actually, yes, I am black, but I'm actually of African descent, or even on my other side, like, I'm actually of Caribbean descent, not just Black British, which is a culture I am proud of in itself. But I'm actually, where did that come from? The Caribbean, you know, and it's just like that sense of, I think, and again, coming back to the importance of what you guys do at Reach, I think seeing people who have owned that and who have, you know, decolonized that, super, super important. And I think you can see the difference in those who have that, you know, swept to the side. Well, I think, and it reminds me of what I was going to say as well. I think that one of the, I guess, reverse privileges of being being other in Australia and not being, you know, like white Australian, not being the norm, quote unquote, is that because you are different, you're forced to reckon with that more. And if you welcome that experience, then it generally ends up coming out positive. But if you try and bury it, it ends up being negative because you will never ever be that norm.
Yeah.
So the more you can recognize that and embrace that, the better.
100%.
And I think one of the things that I had going for me coming here was that because I was coming from places where there was an understanding or framework for where I was, I didn't say fall into the trappings that maybe some young Black boys can fall into when they come here, because you're just coming up here, you don't know anything. And in terms of the Black male experience specifically, you're getting basketball, you're getting rapper, you're getting womanizer, you're getting you know, like aloof, you're getting all this kind of stuff. And I think because I came from a place where there were more of us, so you didn't have to be that as much. When I came here and I had white kids telling me I'm not Black enough, which is wild. Like it was, I had a point of reference to be like, oh, like, well, you don't know anything. Versus for others coming up, it's, and again, not just for the Black male experience, but just in general. Even for, I can't speak to it too much because I don't belong to those communities, but even the, you know, for other racial identities, for other, you know, for the queer community, wherever, it's like there are certain points you're just coming up and you are who you are, and people recognize that. And they either belittle it or they say, oh, you're this, so you must be this. And you think that you have to be that, and that can really mess with your identity when you grow up as well. So it's really kind of cool hearing that. So just to kind of finish off what you're saying, because I cut into it a bit. So following on from kind of coming back from the Gambia, you know, start to grow up, start to own your kind of culture more. How did that, obviously that had a positive impact on your mental health. How did that actually impact you? How did that sense of identity impact your mental health? And is that where your mental health journey started? Or did you find your identity and then your journey started later?
That's interesting. Yeah, I would have said that it definitely started before. Like, I feel like mental health is forever. Like, whether it's you got severe problems or minor problems, or you've got a healthy mind, you know, it's always affected at any point in time. But yeah, for me, coming back from the Gambia was really huge. But a part that actually, when I was hearing you talk, that I missed out on is that like I've got 4 siblings. So I got an older brother, I got 2 younger brothers and a younger sister, and they all live in England. Yeah. So when I get to spend time with them, like it's just, I feel so, like when I'm in that house or I'm with them, it's never, there's nothing fake about it, we're all the same. And like seeing their experience living in London, and like as you was touching on there, like they're not different. You know, you're there's so many Black people of all different shades, different tones, people that, you know, have white parents with Black grandparents or whatever it is. Like there's so many different ways to make it work, even though that kind of sounds like doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean?
100%.
That you don't feel like you have to be a certain way because there's so many people that relate to you. So I've been quite fortunate that I have been back there quite a lot, and because my family's like so entrenched in the culture that I never feel like I'm always reminded who I am. And my dad is someone that's very proud of who he is, so he doesn't allow me, especially once we went back and we had that experience together, he doesn't allow me to forget that, you know. So there's a lot of pride, and for that, I feel like my mind and my mental health is a lot better with the understanding of who I am because of those experiences.
I think it's so important because, like you said, that journey started. Well, it started here because it's forever, but having that kind of rooting, that's a very good foundation for other things to grow. Because I think that because on the flip side, not everybody gets that I guess that I guess like to put a phrase on it, that kind of privilege of pride. Just because I mean, for your dad, he's like a proud Gambian, and he can put that onto you. But for other people coming out of certain circumstances, maybe in that home culture, that culture taught you to be ashamed of yourself, or there was such a traumatic experience that I'm no longer proud of wherever I come from, and so they explicitly or implicitly teach that. And I think, I've kind of seen reverse examples of what you've gone through, where someone started their mental health journey and then learned to love their culture as a result of that, because like, I need to love and accept myself. So I can't afford to hate this aspect of me, the fact that my skin is like this, the fact that I come from this culture as well. It's just, it speaks to why just like, you know, self-expression and allowance and encouragement of being who you are is just so important. Like community without, like, it's community, but while still highlighting like kind of who we are, because yeah, I mean, it's I'm really big on it, and I hate self-hatred in any form.
100%.
And so it warms my heart to hear stories like that, and I think it's super important that people hear it, because like, just on a bit of a tangent, like, you know, I think that what I'm going to say is, sorry, I went a bunch of places, but I think one thing that I think perhaps is potentially, I don't want to say easier, but an edge, I think particularly you and I Cam, is that at the moment, being black is cool, particularly being a black man. So it kind of makes it that we don't have to fight as much. But for other cultures, I don't know exactly what the experience is like as an Indian woman or just generally South Asian woman. But it's that not every culture is afforded that cool allowance. And even though that in itself has its negative, because then it boxes you into certain things and then allows you to other things, it does allow a bit of like grace and ease, you know what I mean? Like it's back in the day, my locks would have been dirty, but now they seem cool. Really, you shouldn't be viewing it any kind of way. Like it's just my hair, but it's that. And so I think I just wanted to kind of make a bit of a caveat and say like it's if there are any young people watching this, like it's very important that you actually like don't hide from the culture you come from. Like even if you are in like a space where you're the only one, like obviously like survive, do the best you can, but like just don't be ashamed to be where you come from or who you are, because that's you. You can't run from that. But also you shouldn't be ashamed of that, and you should be happy and proud of that. That's something that actually like that is, no pun intended, the spice of life. I say no pun intended because you could argue about the spice levels in some places. I don't know, we might have to cut that out. Point is,
I like it.
Yeah. Maybe I'll keep it interesting, but who knows? Anything though, you make the choice. Yeah, wow, that has been an incredible conversation. I mean, chats like this, like, fill my tank in ways like more than I can say. Like, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for staying over time as well. That's just been an incredible conversation. Learning what you guys do with the Reach Foundation, learning a little bit about you. We could go for 3 hours more, but I'll just have to get you guys on another episode. But before we do go, I just want to, where can we find you guys? First of all, like, where can we find you? Where can we kind of keep track of your movements? And yeah, where can we find Reach as well?
So the Reach has an Instagram page, the Reach Foundation. If you see this, don't go searching too far through that Instagram. You might find some funny things in me that I don't want to But check out the Instagram. There's also a website where you can find information on camps, on workshops, on programs, how to become crew. Make sure that you have a look at that. So then, you know what I mean? If you're not that cool, you could eventually become. That's what you should.
You should. I think such an important one. Crew is such an important one. We recruit every year, and like our biggest thing is we want young people to be able to come to our workshops and see themselves, whether it's like sexuality, gender, cultural ethnicity. So like if there are people who do want to get involved and like can see themselves having an impact in similar ways, I said we want you in this community. So
We'll keep all the links in the description. All the links will be in the description. They'll be in the video as well. Yes, they'll be in the video as well. Yes, they will be doing it. And Also, I don't know. Also, I'm going to have the links to helplines as well. If any of these things have brought up any kind of points of trauma or stress, I'm going to have all the helplines. I don't know off the top of my head, but they're going to be in the description for you and as well. And yeah, I just want to sign off with, of course, subscribe. Subscribe to Good Bread. We're always bringing on great people because this is such a great place, great community, and you don't want to miss out on this. And I just want to thank you guys genuinely from the bottom of my heart so much for coming on. Like, I'm not saying this for the camera when I say it, but I genuinely just love conversations like this. I think what you guys do is some of the most important work on earth. Like, we need people like you and work like you so much. And I'm just really grateful. Shout out to Shai behind the camera.
Yeah, thank you, Shai.
As well. Thank you to Navera behind the camera too. And Linda as well behind the camera. Super real ones. Great people here. Great people, and yeah, we'll see you next time. And
Can I add?
Oh, yes.
Thank you to you for like holding space for this. Like I said earlier, like there weren't things like this when I was growing up, and like the impact this stuff can make is huge, and you're making waves. So yeah, thank you.
I'll second that. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you. Honestly, it's an honor and a joy. Like I just feel like I think with the experiences that I've had with this mission, like it's like I feel like it's my job and my joy to just like uplift things like this, and it just makes us better. It's made me improve, and it's made my friends improve, and it's part of it. And the fact that I get to have fun doing it is just another privilege. So, yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But with that,
Subscribe to Born and Bread. Get your brain fed. Yeah, that's it. Wow. Yeah, not me. This is very dope.
Exactly. And with that is going to be a cut.